But before we even get started, I just want, if you guys can briefly kind of introduce yourself in terms of your role, because obviously we're talking silos. We have maybe two different agendas, so hearing of what their roles are can help in terms of as we move forward with the rest of the conversation. So if you guys can just do that, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm Andrea Fischer. I'm a senior senior manager of strategy, media strategy at Bayer. As some of you know, but maybe not all of you, Bayer has almost all of our media in-house at this point, which is a very unique structure, given a lot of partnerships with that other brands and companies have. So I'll let Khara introduce herself, and then I can talk about how we're structured.
Khara Hutchinson, head of the in-house programmatic team. I run a group of hands-on keyboard traders. I also have 5 jobs like most people at a brand, and in this situation, I'm head of programmatic, but I'm also cross-channel activation connection with strategy.
Got it. So, and as we talked about, you guys had to deal with that kind of silo situation within your organization. But before we even get into that, what came up that suddenly there was this need where you knew you had to really interact with all different sides?
Are we going to show
the video we're going to show after we get into, when we get more towards it, like let's sort of give an overview of what to expect, if that's okay.
Sure. So, well, jumping back, I think a bit, I just wanted to chat about how Khara and I sort of work together, because I think, as many of you know, when there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, right, there's the brand marketing folks, there's the sales team, there's your media agency, and all of the sort of cooks in the kitchen, everybody has a hand in the pot. Things can get a bit confusing, and it's really hard to have the key stakeholders to make those important decisions. So I think what's important is that Khara and I came into this relationship realizing that. So I think I've been at Bayer probably about 3 years now. Khara's going on 4. So she was still fairly new when I started, and so was our in-house media structure. So we were kind of forming the structure for the company, if you will, or for the organization. And I think we both just realized pretty early on that our brains work quite differently from each other, given that her programmatic experience and my strategy experience. But instead of pushing back on one another in a way where we just kind of did our own jobs and we're trying to make what our own goals work, we figured out that it was really, I think, most important for us to use that to our advantage, the fact that we thought differently, and kind of push back and challenge each other in a positive way, because at the end of the day, we know that we're just trying to move the business forward. So I think that's probably one of the most important foundations for our relationship.
Do you agree, Khara?
I do. I was actually going to say we probably realized early on that like butting heads was getting us nowhere, because neither of us are going to give an inch. So we're 3 years in. We made it work.
We made it work.
Well, because then you have this huge execution come up, and so, and first of all, no brawling on stage.
We're past that.
We can wait till afterwards. But I mean, you have this huge huge campaign come up, but it's completely different than anything you guys have done before.
Yeah.
And so, even though yes, you were playing nice beforehand, obviously this reinforced the fact that you really needed to work together and with other groups within the organization and agencies. So let's talk about, and then we can show the reel, but let's talk about this particular campaign and what was so different in the fact, the way it came about in terms of where you were starting the strategy.
Yeah, so I think many of you in the room are familiar with Bayer aspirin, and I think we continued to buy our media for Bayer aspirin in the way that was working for us, and it wasn't a problem, but we were trying to think of new and different ways to engage a new audience and re-engage the existing audience. And what happened is our research came upon a really interesting stat where we found that you're 2 times more likely to experience a heart event while you're watching your home team play, which kind of blew everybody away. And so what we did was we really jumped on top of that and let it run our campaign. And we just took it and ran with it. But we had to work really quickly. So I think, rather than having 100 different hands in the pot, what we did was we formed sort of a key stakeholder group of people who were in charge of all of our different groups: programmatic, digital media activation, strategy, brand, legal, down to literally every, our PR, our comms, everything. There was one key stakeholder in charge of making the decisions for all of those pieces, because we knew that we were moving quickly and we had to all really trust each other. And we pushed each other and challenged each other, right? There are lots of questions that came up throughout the campaign because this was a different sort of thing for us. It was bold for something like aspirin, and it's really focused in upper funnel and awareness, which is really interesting because I know we've been talking about that a ton the past couple of days. But what I think is the most interesting is it's not super different in terms of the channel selection that we use. It's how we are using those channels and the message that we're putting out on those channels that's different. And that's what makes the campaign bold and different.
Well, and talk about that. I mean, Khara, maybe you can chime in in terms of, you're starting with an insight as opposed to, okay, we want to target this demo, or we want, the traditional ways that a strategy maybe begins. So how did you work your way from that to get to where you finally were?
So as Andrea said, I've been at Bayer I'm going into my 5th year actually, and I've always been on Bayer aspirin. So by the time we get to this mid last year, I know aspirin really well. I know the audiences, I know what's profitable, I know a lot of the medical jargon, all that. And so we're sitting in this huge room with very high up people from all these different parts that Andrea just went through, and they're talking about this sports stat. I'm not a sports person, as some of you talking to me have already gathered. And they're like, we're going to wipe out everything that we've done for aspirin for right now, and we're going to start from scratch and build a whole new audience strategy and channel mix. And that was hard for me in the beginning because I know aspirin, I know it works. So I really had to take a step back and think, all right, I'm going to be a sports person. I did a lot of mix, goal, basket, hoop, pitch, field, blunders along the way, but I'm going to think like a sports person. I'm married to one, so that actually made it a little bit easier. And then think about where I need the media to be with them in the moment. And that was a really big part of the whole campaign. It was, where are we in the moment?
Well, even when you talk about, when you say, and again, you have to say a heart experience, is that the correct term? You can't say a heart attack,
You cannot.
Heart event.
Yeah.
So talk about that, because obviously, given what you guys are talking about, there's a lot of challenges there, and what other ways? You just mentioned some of the challenges in terms of sort of forgetting about what you know and thinking differently. But what other challenges were you facing when in trying to put this strategy together?
I think Khara just touched on a big one. Being in the moment was a big one for us because I think we're not used to buying that way. We're not used to having to make sure. I mean, if you think about it, right? The goal for us was putting the consumers in the mindset of that potential for a heart event, right? And so we just really had to be creative and unique and think about, okay, Super Bowl. When it's down to the wire and your team is playing, especially if anybody knows if you're a Phillies fan because of the Super Bowl, how you're feeling in that moment, right? And then when you see that message that you're 2 times more likely to experience a heart event, you're like, wow, I can kind of get that, right? Because of how you're feeling right then and there. And that's what we were trying to reinvent for the audience. But that was a real challenge, right? We didn't have a ton of those moments. And as you know, something like the NFL is super tough to get into. So we had to find unique ways to capitalize on those moments, which for us was a challenge. But I think we did a really good job at breaking through.
Well, do we want to show the video now, or you want to talk a little bit more about it and set it up?
I think we should show. I wanted everybody to be pumped up with the video.
I'm sorry. I just
sorry.
Okay, video now, please.
So a 2-2 tie, 28 seconds left.
Chicago down 1, holds up for the game.
There we go with the kickoff. He'll probably try to squib it, and he does.
There's a high fly ball deep to right.
Oh, the band is out on the field!
Oh, he got it!
He shoots, he scores!
3-3.
Bayer Aspirin, official sponsor of fans' hearts.
What a wild one!
Very good. But in my defense, would any of you even would any of you even known about any of that without
I mean, I hope that's the point of the commercial.
That is true too. You're not going to have
No.
me explaining. Hold on. Let me tell you about this. Okay. So obviously you guys were able to get into the moment a little bit, but there were still other challenges you were facing. I mean, it was the bear.com site, dealing with your partnership. Like, talk about those kind of things and how you were able to continue move forward.
I can start with that one. So one of the biggest challenges is legally, and from, I don't know, there's other pharma. Is there any pharma people here? Or OTC? We're very careful about how we position aspirin, and so we can't come out and say, if you've had a heart event, you should be taking aspirin. We have to tell you to go talk to your doctor. So we're trying to get people to think about their heart health in the moment around something they're passionate about, and then we're trying to get them to go to an owned and operated site where we have an app that we developed in relationship with another company called Huma, which is a 15-question survey, and any performance media people will tell you that is really difficult to get them to do. We couldn't remove any of we couldn't make it shorter, right? Like, every angle we tried out from a performance angle, shot down by regulatory and legal. So we were sending them to check your heart risk, which is, a subdomain of the aspirin site, and trying to get them to go through the survey to talk to their doctor. So not only as a CPG OTC where we don't own the point of sale, now we've actually just sent you to some place to have a private conversation with your HCP, and then, try to measure success on a campaign that way. And that is really challenging to do. It's hard to do.
So, and how did you sort of get around that? Because obviously you have found success with this campaign. What were you doing in terms of to try to keep that connection with your target?
Yeah, I think what's really important is we had to alter our KPIs, right? We're not driving to retail or in-store. We're driving to this risk assessment because ultimately we want you to go to your doctor and have this conversation. So for us, our KPI became, getting people to go to this and take this risk assessment. So I think, and we're pretty happy so far with what we've seen. But to Khara's point, I think it's different than any of our other campaigns, and I think a lot of probably other pharma people will, or actually any other CPG people in the room will feel the same way.
What? Oh, go ahead.
From an activation standpoint, the traders that I spoke about, it was the first time that they've worked for me at Bayer where I said, we're going to have a stand-up every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And their faces, like on camera, when I told them that, they're like, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday? And I said, yes, this is a DR campaign. We have a very little amount of time, and we're generating a whole lot of data in a very quick time period, which is not that we don't do that on a regular basis, but this is a real-time signal that we have that we don't normally have. And so we did have these quick meetings so that we could pivot really fast and change channel allocation. And one of the things I love so much about working at a brand, Bayer is my first brand that I've been at, maybe my last, is I don't have any pressure to fund a certain channel a certain way. I have no agency partners telling me that I have to spend X amount of dollars. I don't have commitments that I've had in other jobs or types of companies that I've worked in. So we really could make these huge cuts on like a Monday morning. It would be done by lunchtime. It would be broadcasted out to the rest of the organization in the way that they needed to be told by Monday afternoon. And then on Tuesday, we'd start gathering data. Wednesday morning, we'd be looking at the trends and trying to decide whether or not we were ready to move. And I could talk about activation and optimization ad nauseum, so I won't keep on that, but it really was a very different initiative for us in the activation. It was really fun. I haven't done things like that since the early days.
Well, and also, I mean, and you've made mention to it as far as having to sort of change up your channels. What, you're used to doing one thing, and now for this particular campaign, you went at it a different way. So how did your mix change, and what were the reasonings behind those changes?
Yeah, I'm giving Khara a look because we had to have some hard conversations sometimes for both of us, right? We would have a call and look through the data and say, listen, this tactic or this channel is not working as well as we had hoped or wanted it to. And there's a specific instance where I said to Khara, this tactic isn't working. I think we need to shift dollars out of it into this other tactic. And she said, wait, just give me a couple of days. I think I can maybe get it there. And I was like, Khara, we don't have a couple days. We're moving quickly. She's like, you know what? You're right. Let's just do it. We had the back and forth, and the thing is, I think if she had a couple of days, maybe she could do it, right? I have that faith and trust in her as my partner, but we didn't have a couple of days. So we had to have that back and forth. It was a quick, and she said to her trader, you know what? We're gonna do it. Let's shift out. But I think the ability for us to have that quick, there's not 27 people in email exchange. We're on a call, we have a 5-minute conversation, we make a decision, and we make it happen, and we're able to see the fruits of that. So I think it's really important that we're able to have that open kind of and quick, because we really had to be nimble.
Well, when you talk channels, or even maybe the specific channel or in general, what were you finding that you normally traditionally would use, or your go-to channels that worked, whether it was social or linear or whatever it may be, and then how would you promoting this, in what way, where did you take from to add to, or in what way to change it up?
I truthfully, I probably wouldn't be allowed to tell you guys that, but I honestly don't remember specifics. I swear to you, even if you caught me with a drink later, I probably couldn't tell you what that was. But I think that because we were so focused on a different KPI, and I think that's the thing. So the channel mix had to change because the KPI changed. And even if something looks like it's working in a KPI that looks good, like a nice to have KPI, and Andrea and I do this a lot on we're both on the pain brand, so we're aligned across this on all the pain brands that Bayer has, is we'll often do things like, how about this, you guys salespeople, you guys are gonna inundate us when we get home, right? And we're gonna look through our campaigns and we're gonna say, like, what's the right thing? And we have to keep going back to what is our job to be done here. And I think as media people, it's really easy for us to say, well, we could just grab that. We could do this. We could do all these different things, but then you're not doing anything really well and you're not staying on objective. And this campaign, because it was get the conversation with the healthcare professional, get to people in the moment, we had to constantly go back to, is what we're deciding and doing here, staying true to our mission, which is drive the conversation, stay in the moment, right? And I talk to some of you guys outside the pool, and I do this a lot. It really do, and have to continually say things over and over to myself, or like literally write a Post-it note and put it on my desk, like, the mission for Midol for this quarter is this. And so I have to think about, whenever someone's asking me for a media activation or sales conversation, can you fit into my mission right now? And if not, it doesn't mean it's not gonna happen. I tell all the salespeople, and I'll just warn you guys, it's a long game with Bayer sometimes, right? Sometimes you have to work, our organization for a year, and when I say I truly don't have anything until Q1 2024, I will totally talk to you in Q4 2023, but I don't have any money for you until then, right? Because we have a mission, we have an objective, and aspirin was different. So we had to keep reminding ourselves, and we had to keep reminding all those cooks in the kitchen that there's so many cooks in these kind of kitchens.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, I think a good example is we probably wouldn't have normally bought spots in the Super Bowl, but we did this year. But that doesn't mean we took from another channel. It means that we changed up how we were buying our TV. We bought local spots that in the Super Bowl to align, but we just changed up how we were using that channel and the message that we were putting out on that channel. And we did it in a different way. We had QR codes out there for people, and we're sending them to this risk assessment, loud and clear. So I think that's an example of how we sort of changed up our mix a little bit.
Well, and so now, obviously, the Super Bowl, that's huge, and it's not something that you guys that you wouldn't have normally done. But how do you now moving forward? Because obviously, we're seeing every Super Bowl, every football on Sundays or Monday Night Football or whatever it is. So is that the plan in terms of still continuing to run at those types of opportunities on TV, or is it more now going social, and you don't have to be necessarily specific, but just it's that, not just that one activation. You want to be able to continue and use this because you was so successful, and it is a message you want to keep playing.
That's a great question. we're figuring it out right now is the honest truth. We're still looking at how the campaign is performing because it's still running, and we're pivoting, and we're learning and growing and changing the campaign as we go. So we're figuring that out right now.
Okay, I want to put you on, Andrea called you out on something that she had to kind of get you to do on her side. Any of those moments? I'm not trying to cause any friction here, but
Why do you hate working with me?
Listen, we're sharing the same cold. We are totally good. We're fine. No. I mean, look, Andrea has a different relationship with the brands than I do. Like, I am everywhere and nowhere sometimes all at once, right? She has conversations with brand people that I'm not privy with. Aspirin was a little bit different because we were all in a fishbowl, and I don't think we've ever done a campaign like that before. No, I will say to her, and if I don't, and there are times when I like try to say to people, sorry, I'm trying to say this nicely without starting a fight between us. 50% of the time, we agree. 25% of the time, we agree to disagree and it goes her way. 25% of the time, we agree to disagree and it goes my way. And it tends to work out
It's
fine.
a great marriage.
well, so we don't. Thank you. And so we don't look for any divorce right now.
No,
I will
no.
drop it there and open it up to you guys
Yeah.
if you have any questions.
This is Shelley with Ball. Could you guys elaborate a little bit more on the timing of this campaign? Were you guys revealing it at Super Bowl and then you were following up on all of the traffic that you got post? And how did you support that? Or just, kind of explain more of this campaign launch to us and how detailed it went either before or after the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I can start with the part of it. So we launched in February, and there was an incident that happened in January that made a lot of national news. And there was like a concern and a feeling that if we launched, we would look like we were being opportunistic with it. And I remember sitting in a room being like, if only it took 2 weeks to do this entire campaign and shoot this commercial and get all these things in line. But we did launch the first week of February. I don't know when the Super Bowl was. I'm so sorry. So I don't know when the Super
I'm sure someone in here does.
And I'm not the linear person, so I'm going to leave
We
that
launched
with
with
her.
the Super Bowl.
Okay. Digital media launched before the Super Bowl because we had its performance media, and I was trying to eke out as much time as I could for trending data and optimizations and things like that. So I got the green light to go ahead a little bit earlier in digital. And then the Super Bowl happened sometime, and then we launched the rest.
This is Ashley from Quigley, and the Super Bowl was February 12th.
Thank you.
So the overall strategy when you're trying to target specifically to people who are watching their home team, I would assume that it kind of heavily skews male when you're basically gearing up. But that being said, the Super Bowl hits both men and women. With your ultimate goal driving to using the QR code and driving to a microsite to basically have somebody fill out 15 questions and then talk to their doctor. I mean, I know that you're not driving to retail, but ultimately, did you have an overall sales lift after they had that conversation with their doctor? Or what type of, I know that sales probably wasn't the ultimate goal. It was more of an education that ultimately leads to sales, but did you guys see an incremental lift?
The goal is always sales.
I know.
It's
I know.
always sales. So I honestly think that it's too early to tell, and I also don't think that we can track. So one of my other jobs at Bayer is I run healthcare marketing, HCP marketing across the OTC portfolio. Getting that conversation insight with doctors and getting anywhere near that HCP world is just really challenging itself. I think it's too early to tell. I think we're happy with the increases in traffic. We're happy with the completion rate on the website, all those things. But time will tell, which is why when Andrea says we're still figuring it out, because we're not going to lock in something for 6 months from now until we have the ability to see, how the first 3, 4, 5 months of the campaign have been going.
Hi, I'm Randy Greenberg. I'm with a challenge app called Hypespace. Did the conversation in social change after you launched this?
Yeah, it did. We saw a lot around, especially after the Super Bowl, of, we did some social listening, and we saw a lot of people like, wow, did you see that ad? Because it's an impactful stat. And that was so satisfying for us to see that conversation. And a lot, obviously a lot on Twitter, especially, but Facebook, Instagram, but mostly Facebook and Twitter, just to see that people were responding. A lot of the responses were just, wow. And that's what we were going for, so I don't think we could have hoped for anything better.
Yeah, the overall campaign was just not this TVC. It was, we had a pretty heavy integration with NBC, and there's a ton of MediaPost wrote an article about it. There's a ton of PR out there about it. So there was a whole lot of activity that was outside of just traditional linear and CTV. We did a lot of innovative things for us and things that we hadn't done before.
Yeah.
So I wish we could have shown the sizzle reel, but we got the hard hand slap no. But the sizzle reel is really like lots of comments out there, lots of social media conversation. Our PR team, our influencer teams, they just blew it out of the water.
Yeah, we had a last minute, really great. Our PR team was amazing, and engaged with Tony Gonzalez, who, if you're a football fan, you know who that is. And he had a lot of conversations around the Super Bowl just about heart health and how it's affected his family's life and his mother and his grandmother. And there were a lot of conversations around that. We had a lot of people in the sports space wearing heart monitors during the game, during key moments in the game, and checking their heart rate to actually see the spike in your heart rate when they're watching these heart-pounding moments during the game. So, again, things that we don't normally do but are so impactful when you see them like that. And then, it's obviously not in a vacuum. You're seeing our spot, you're seeing our integration, you're seeing our social media posts and our content. So, really interesting stuff.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Well, thank you guys.
Thank
I'm glad
you.
no fighting and